The Magic School Bus Chapter Book. Written by Judith Stamper. Illustrations by Steve Heffel. Introduction. Hi, my name is Tim. I am one of the kids in Ms. Frizzle's class. Maybe you've heard of Ms. Frizzle. Sometimes we just call her the Frizz. She is a terrific teacher, but a little strange. One of her favorite subjects is science, and she knows everything about it. The Frizz takes us on lots of field trips in the magic school business. Believe me, it's not called magic for nothing. Once you step on that bus, anything can happen. Ms. Frizzle likes to surprise us, but we can usually tell when she is planning a special lesson. We just look at what she's wearing. One day Ms. Frizzle came to school in an ice blue dress covered with bears. But these weren't cute little teddy bears. Oh, no. They were big white polar bears, the kind that live near the North Pole. Right away, I knew we were in for an adventure, one that would take us to the top of the world. Chapter 1. Brrrr, it's freezing in this classroom, Phoebe said with a shiver. It feels like the North Pole. I was shivering, too. But I thought it was just my imagination. I was looking at pictures of the Arctic on the internet. The Arctic is a region that includes the icy Arctic Ocean and the regions surrounding it. Our class was studying Arctic animals, and I needed facts about polar bear babies fast. Phoebe, if you're cold, you can use my blubber experiment, Ralphie offered. He was doing a project about blubber. It's what keeps lots of Arctic animals warm. Miss Frizzle, Dorothy said, I think I know why it's so cold. Somebody turned on the air conditioner. And I'll bet I know who did it. Our eyes followed Da's gaze across the room to Arnold. He had pushed his desk close to the air conditioner. On top of the desk was his igloo project. Ice cubes were melting all over his desk. But I had to do something, Arnold said. My project was turning into a puddle. Well, that explains why we don't live in igloos around here, the Frizz said. She walked over to the air conditioner and shut it off. Of course, building an igloo is a good way for people to stay warm if they live in the Arctic. How do I make an igloo that won't melt? I guess it's back to the drawing board for me, Arnold sighed. How do all those Arctic animals stay warm without igloos? Wanda asked. According to my research, Dorothy said, most Arctic animals have adapted to the freezing weather. Like growing blubber under their skin, Ralphie said. That's how seals stay warm. Or having thick fur and living underground, Carlos said. That's how lemmings stay warm. Keeping Cozy in the Arctic, by Dorothy Ann. How Arctic animals stay warm. Seals have a thick layer of blubber. Musk oxen have a two-layered coat of fur. Lemmings have furry bodies and build tunnels underground. Polar bears have a layer of blubber and thick, hollow hair that helps hold in their body's heat. Watch out, I'm coming through, Arnold said. My igloo has turned into slush. Arnold picked up his project and dumped it into the sink. Don't worry, Arnold, Ms. Frizzle said. You'll figure it out by tomorrow. Tomorrow! That was when our Arctic projects had to be done. My project was on the polar bear. And my research was going great except for one little problem. I couldn't find facts about polar bear babies. Ms. Frizzle, Keisha said. I think there's an animal missing in the polar baby parade. Oh! It was my animal that was Miss ING. No polar baby parade would be complete without a baby polar bear. Miss Frizzle walked over to Keisha. She was staring at a wall of the classroom that was covered with pictures of baby animals that lived in the Arctic. They were lined up in a cute little parade. Each animal had facts about it written underneath its picture. Let me see, Ms. Frizzle said, checking out the animals. Here's a baby Arctic fox, and a young musk ox, and a little caribou, and a teeny lemming, and a baby seal. All of a sudden she stopped walking along the parade of baby animals. It's Tim's animal that's missing, the Frizz said. She gave me a surprised look. But don't worry, Keisha. I'm sure that everyone will get their project done on time. I groaned. I could barely believe my baby polar bear was missing. I always like to be the first one done with a project. I walked over to Miss Frizzle and whispered in a low voice so Keisha couldn't hear. Miss Frizzle, the books in the library didn't have a thing about polar bear babies, I said. From the desk of Ms. Frizzle. What's in a name? The word polar comes from the word pole. The polar bear got its name because it lives near the North Pole. I checked out every one, I explained. Now I'm trying to find information on the internet. I had found lots of cool facts about polar bears, but nothing about babies. Well, someone had better hurry up, Keisha said. Or one baby is going to miss the parade. I sighed under my breath and stared at the computer screen. My baby wasn't going to miss the parade. The polar bear was king of the north. I'd make sure the polar bear baby was at the head of the parade. Just then, I found what I was looking for at the website of the Polar Bear Research Station. I clicked on the picture of a mother polar bear with 2 cubs. And did I luck out? Miss Frizzle, a scientist at the Polar Bear Research Station, has an online chat right now. Can I ask him a question? I asked. The Frizz leaned over my shoulder to check out the website. She saw the scientist's name Lukaglilik. A big grin spread over her face. Go right ahead, Tim, she said. I typed in my first question, what time of year do polar bear babies come out of their dens? Seconds later, I got an answer, in the spring, about 4 or 5 months after they are born. I typed in my second question, how many babies does a mother have at one time? The answer came right back, a polar bear mother has from 1 to 4 babies. Usually there are 2 bears in a litter. Then Miss Frizzle leaned over my shoulder and typed in a message, Hi, Luke, remember me? Valerie Frizzle. I couldn't believe it. Ms. Frizzle even knew a scientist in the Arctic. A message came right back. Do I remember you? How could I forget? You always drove that yellow motorcycle in college. I hear you drive a wild school bus now. Why don't you come up for a visit? Ms. Frizzle chuckled. Tim, she said, would you like to find out about polar bear babies in person? Wow, I said. How cool would that be? Very cool, Tim, the Frizz said. Like 50 degrees below zero. Ms. Frizzle typed in a message. We're on our way, Luke. See you there, bear. Luke wrote back. Will do, caribou. Ms. Frizzle didn't waste a minute. She jumped up and ran to the supply closet. A few minutes later, she came out in the strangest outfit ever. The Frizz had on a blue parka and pants covered with polar bears. Cool Clothes for the Cold, by Keisha. The first parkas were made of pieces of reindeer skin sewn together. The reindeer hide was worn on the outside. The soft fur was worn on the inside for warmth. A parka has a hood because lots of body heat is lost through the head. Chapter 2. Miss Frizzle, Arnold asked nervously, what's going on? How about a sleepover in a real igloo, Arnold? The Frizz asked. I don't think so, Arnold said. I promise not to turn on the air conditioner again. Now everybody was crowded around the Frizz. Why are you dressed in a snowsuit, Miss Frizzle? Phoebe asked. It's April. Because we're going on a trip, the Frizz said. Your snowsuits are already on the bus. But, Arnold stammered. Hurry up, everyone, Miss Frizzle called. We're headed for the Arctic. Just follow me. We ran out to the parking lot. The magic school bus was sitting there. It had a big sign on its side, Arctic Explorer. I grabbed a seat in the front of the bus beside Dorothy and, fasten your seatbelts, kids, Miss Frizzle instructed. The Arctic Explorer is ready for takeoff. The Frizz started the engine of the Magi school business. We cruised out of the parking lot onto the road. Soon, the sound of the bus turned into the roar of jet engines. I looked out the window. The magic school bus had sprouted wings. Whoosh! We were up in the air. Arnold peered out the window. Bye, Mom. Bye, Dad, he said. It's been nice knowing you. Arnold, I said, turning around. You don't have to worry. Ms. Frizzle is behind the wheel. That's exactly what I am worried about, Arnold said. And I don't like the look of those polar bears on her parka. Polar bears don't usually eat humans, Arnold, I said. As long as people stay out of their way, that is. Well, that seems like a good reason not to get in their way. Dorothy and said. King of the Arctic, by Tim. Polar bears are at the top of the Arctic food chain. They mostly eat seals. Polar bears do not attack humans unless provoked. Where are we headed, Ms. Frizzle? Carlos asked. To the Polar Bear Research Station in Alaska, the Frizz answered. It's just inside the Arctic Circle. Ms. Frizzle pressed a button on the control panel. A little movie screen popped down over our heads. It showed a map of the Arctic. Do you see the North Pole? Ms. Frizzle asked. It's at the very top of the world and in the middle of the area that is called the Arctic Circle. What's the Arctic Circle, Ms. Frizzle? Keisha asked. And who drew it? The Arctic Circle is an invisible line, Keisha, the Frizz answered. It marks the region at the top of the globe, the most northern part of the Earth. And it's where you can find polar bears, I said excitedly. Polar Bear Country, by Tyre. Polar bears live all over the Arctic polar region. 5 nations can call themselves part of the Polar Bear Country. The United States, polar bears only live in the state of Alaska. Canada, Russia, Denmark. Polar bears live on the island of Greenland, which is part of Denmark. Norway. The Arctic Explorer wasn't wasting any time. Down below us were miles and miles of forest. We were covering ground fast. Far-flying feathered friends, by Carlos. Arctic terns are the top frequent flyers of the animal world every fall. These birds fly south from the Arctic all the way to the Antarctic, the area around Earth's South Pole. Every spring, they fly back from the Antarctic to the Arctic. That's a 22,000-mile, 35,200 kilometers round trip every year. Hold on, kids, the Frizz announced. I'm dropping in altitude. There's something down there you've got to see. A few seconds later, the plane dropped down like a roller coaster. All of a sudden my ears popped and my stomach was left somewhere on the ceiling. This had better be good, I moaned.